Section 11 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Nicholas Clifford. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1, by Cao Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bencraft Joly. Chapter 5, Part 1. The spirit of Jia Baoyu visits the confines of the great void. The monitory vision fairy expounds in ballads the dream of the Red Chamber. Having in the fourth chapter explained to some degree the circumstances attending the settlement of the mother and children of the Xue family in the Rong mansion and other incidental matters, we will now revert to Lin Daiyu. Ever since her arrival in the Rong mansion, Dowager Lady Jia showed her the highest sympathy and affection, so that in everything connected with sleeping, eating, rising, and accommodation, she was on the same footing as Pao Yu, with the result that Ying Chun, Xi Chun, and Tan Chun, her three granddaughters, had after all to take a back seat. In fact, the intimate and close friendliness and love which sprung up between the two persons Pao Yu and Dai Yu was, in the same degree, of an exceptional kind, as compared with those existing between the others. By daylight they were wont to walk together and to sit together. At night they would desist together and rest together. Really, it was a case of harmony in language and concord in ideas, of the consistency of varnish or of glue, a close friendship, when at this unexpected juncture there came this girl, Xue Baochai, who, though not very much older in years than the others, was nevertheless in manner so correct and in features so beautiful that the consensus of opinion was that Dai herself could not come up to her standard. What is more, in her ways Baochai was so full of good tact, so considerate and accommodating, so unlike Dai, who was supercilious, self-confident, and without any regard for the world below, that the natural consequences was that she soon completely won the hearts of the lower classes. Even the whole number of waiting-maids would also for the most part play and joke with Baochai. Hence it was that Dai fostered in her heart considerable feelings of resentment, but of this, however, Baochai had not the least inkling. Pao Yu was likewise in the prime of his boyhood, and was besides, as far as the bent of his natural disposition was concerned, in every respect absurd and perverse, regarding his cousins, whether male or female, one and all with one common sentiment, and without any distinction whatever between the degree of distant or close relationship. Sitting and sleeping, as he now was, under the same roof with Dai in Dowager Lady Jia's suite of rooms, he naturally became comparatively more friendly with her than with his other cousins, and this friendliness led to greater intimacy, and this intimacy once established, rendered unavoidable the occurrence of the blight of harmony from unforeseen slight pretexts. These two had had on this very day, for some unknown reason, words between them more or less unfriendly, and Dai was again sitting all alone in her room, giving way to tears. Pao Yu was once more within himself quite conscience-smitten for his ungraceful remarks, and coming forward he humbly made advances, until at length Dai, little by little, came round. As the plum blossom in the eastern part of the garden of the Ning mansion was in full bloom, Jia Jian's spouse, Mrs. Yu, made preparations for a collation, purposing to send invitations to Dowager Lady Jia, Mesdames Xing and Wang, and the other members of the family to come and admire the flowers, and when the day arrived the first thing she did was to take Jia Rong and his wife, the two of them, and come and ask them round in person. Dowager Lady Jia and the other inmates crossed over after their early meal, and they at once promenaded the Hui Fang (concentrated fragrance) garden. First tea was served and next wine, but the entertainment was no more than a family banquet of the kindred of the two mansions of Ning and Rung, so that there was a total lack of any novel or original recreation that could be put on record. After a little time Pao Yu felt tired and languid and inclined for his midday siesta. Take good care, Dowager Lady Jia enjoined some of them, and stay with him while he rests for a while when he can come back. Whereupon Jia Rong's wife, Mrs. Chin, smiled and said with eagerness, We got ready in here a room for Uncle Bao, so let your venerable ladyship set your mind at ease. Just hand him over to my charge and he will be quite safe. Mothers and sisters," she continued, addressing herself to Pao yü's nurses and waiting maids, "invite Uncle Bao to follow me in here." Dowager Lady Chia had always been aware of the fact that Mrs. Qin was a most trustworthy person, naturally courteous and scrupulous, and in every action likewise so benign and gentle, indeed the most estimable among the whole number of her great grandson's wives, so that when she saw her about to go and attend to Pao yü, she felt that for certainty everything would be well. Mrs. Qin then and there led away a company of attendants, and came into the rooms inside the drawing room. Pao yü, upon raising his head and catching sight of a picture hung on the upper wall representing a human figure in perfect style, the subject of which was a portrait of Yen Li, speedily felt his heart sink within him. There was also a pair of scrolls, the text of which was: "A thorough insight into worldly matters arises from knowledge. A clear perception of human nature emanates from literary lore." On perusal of these two sentences, albeit the room was sumptuous and beautifully laid out, he would on no account remain in it. "Let us go at once," he hastened to observe, "let us go at once." Mrs. Qin, upon hearing his objections, smiled. "If this," she said, "is really not nice, where are you going? If you won't remain here, well then, come into my room." Pao yü nodded his head and gave a faint grin. "Where do you find the propriety," a nurse thereupon interposed, "of an uncle going to sleep in the room of a nephew's wife?" "Ai ya!" exclaimed Mrs. Qin laughing, "I don't mind whether he gets angry or not, at what I say. But how old can he be as to reverentially shun all these things? Why, my brother was with me here last month, didn't you see him? He's, true enough, of the same age as Uncle Bao, but were the two of them to stand side by side, I suspect that he would be much higher in stature." "How is it," asked Pao yü, "that I didn't see him? Bring him along and let me have a look at him." "He's separated," they all ventured as they laughed, "by a distance of 20 or 30 li, and how can he be brought along? But you'll see him some day." As they were talking they reached the interior of Mrs. Qin's apartments. As soon as they got in, a very faint puff of sweet fragrance was wafted into their nostrils. Pao yü readily felt his eyes itch and his bones grow weak. "What a fine smell!" he exclaimed several consecutive times. Upon entering the apartments and gazing at the partition wall, he saw a picture, the handiwork of Tang Po hu, consisting of begonias drooping in the springtime, on either side of which was one of a pair of scrolls written by Lin Daiyu, a literary chancellor of the Sung era, running as follows: "A gentle chill doth circumscribe the dreaming man, because the spring is cold. The fragrant whiff which wafts itself into man's nose is the perfume of wine." On the table was a mirror, one which had been placed in days of yore, in the mirror palace of the Emperor Wu Zetian. On one side stood a gold platter, in which Fei Yen, who lived in the Cao state, used to stand and dance. In this platter was laid a quince, which An Lu Shan had flung at the Empress Tai Chen, inflicting a wound on her breast. In the upper part of the room stood a divan ornamented with gems, on which the Emperor's daughter Shou Chang was wont to sleep in the Hanjiang Palace. Hanging were curtains embroidered with strings of pearls by Tung Chang, the Imperial Princess. "It's nice in here, it's nice in here," exclaimed Pao yü with a chuckle. "This room of mine," observed Mrs. Qin smilingly, "is, I think, good enough for even spirits to live in," and as she uttered these words, she with her own hands opened a gauze coverlet which had been washed by Xi Shi, and removed a bridal pillow which had been held in the arms of Hung Yang. Instantly the nurses attended to Pao yü, until he had laid down comfortably, when they quietly dispersed, leaving only the 4 waiting maids, Xi Ren, Qiu Wen, Qing Wen, and She Yue, to keep him company. "Mind be careful as you sit under the eaves," Mrs. Qin recommended the young waiting maids, "that the cats do not start a fight." Pao yü then closed his eyes, and little by little became drowsy and fell asleep. It seemed to him just as if Mrs. Qin was walking ahead of him. Forthwith, with listless and unsettled step, he followed Mrs. Ch'in to some spot or other, where he saw carnation-like railings, jade-like steps, verdant trees and limpid pools, a spot where actually no trace of any human being could be met with, where of the shifting mundane dust little had penetrated. Pao yü felt in his dream quite delighted. This place, he mused, is pleasant, and I may as well spend my whole lifetime in here. Though I may have to lose my home, I'm quite ready for the sacrifice, for it's far better being here than being flogged day after day by father, mother and teacher. While he pondered in this erratic strain, he suddenly heard the voice of some human being at the back of the rocks, giving vent to this song. Like scattering clouds doth fleet a vernal dream, the transient flowers pass like a running stream. Maidens and youths bear this ye all in mind, in useless grief what profit will ye find? Pao yü perceived that the voice was that of a girl. The song was barely at an end when he soon espied in the opposite direction a beautiful girl advancing with majesty and elastic step, a girl quite unlike any ordinary mortal being. There is this poem which gives an adequate description of her. Lo, she just quits the willow bank, and sudden now she issues from the flower-bedecked house. As onward alone she speeds, she startles the birds perched in the trees by the pavilion, to which as she draws nigh, her shadow flits by the verandah. Her fairy clothes now flutter in the wind, a fragrant perfume like unto musk or olea is wafted in the air. Her apparel lotus-like is sudden wont to move, and the jingle of her ornaments strikes the ear. Her dimpled cheeks resemble, as they smile, a vernal peach. Her kingfisher coiffure is like a cumulus of clouds. Her lips part cherry-like, her pomegranate-like teeth conceal a fragrant breath. Her slender waist, so beauteous to look at, is like the skipping snow wafted by a gust of wind. The sheen of her pearls and kingfisher trinkets abounds with splendour, green as the feathers of a duck and yellow as the plumes of a goose. Now she issues to view, and now is hidden among the flowers. Beautiful she is when displeased, beautiful when in high spirits. With lissom step she treads along the pond as if she soars on wings or sways in air. Her eyebrows are crescent moons, and knit under her smiles. She speaks, and yet she seems no word to utter. Her lotus-like feet with ease pursue their course. She stops, and yet she seems still to be in motion. The charms of her figure all vie with ice in purity, and in splendour with precious gems. Lovely is her brilliant attire, so full of grandeur and refined grace. Lovable her countenance, as if moulded from some fragrant substance, or carved from white jade. Elegant is her person, like a phoenix, dignified like a dragon soaring high. What is her chastity like? Like a white plum in spring with snow nestling in its broken skin. Her purity? Like autumn orchids bedecked with dewdrops. Her modesty? Like a fir tree growing in a barren plain. Her comeliness? Like russet clouds reflected in a limpid pool. Her gracefulness? Like a dragon in motion wriggling in a stream. Her refinement? Like the rays of the moon shooting onto a cool river. Sure she is to put Xi Tze to shame. Bound to put Wang Qiang to the blush. What a remarkable person! Where was she born? And whence does she come? One thing is true, that in fairyland there is no second like her, that in the purple courts of heaven there is no one fit to be her peer. Forsooth, who can it be so surpassingly beautiful? Pao yü, upon realizing that she was a fairy, was much elated, and with eagerness advanced and made a bow. "My divine sister," he ventured, as he put on a smile, "I don't know whence you come and whither you are going, nor have I any idea what this place is, but I make bold to entreat that you would take my hand and lead me on." "My abode," replied the fairy, "is above the heavens of divested animosities, and in the ocean of discharged sorrows. I'm the fairy of monitory vision, of the cave of drooping fragrance, in the mount of emitted spring, within the confines of the great void. I preside over the voluptuous affections and sensual debts among the mortal race, and supervise in the dusty world the envies of women and the lusts of man. It's because I've recently come to hear that the retribution for voluptuousness extends up to this place, that I betake myself here in order to find suitable opportunities of disseminating mutual affections. My encounter with you now is also not a matter of accident. This spot is not distant from my confines. I have nothing much there besides a cup of the tender buds of tea, plucked by my own hands, and a pitcher of luscious wine, fermented by me, as well as several sprite-like singing and dancing maidens of great proficiency, and 12 ballads of spiritual song recently completed on the dream of the Red Chamber. But won't you come along with me for a stroll?" Pao yü at this proposal felt elated to such an extraordinary degree that he could skip from joy, and there and then discarding from his mind all idea of where Mrs. Ch'in was, he readily followed the Fairy. They reached some spot where there was a stone tablet put up in a horizontal position, on which were visible the 4 large characters, "The confines of the great void," on either side of which was one of a pair of scrolls with the 2 antithetical sentences. "When falsehood stands for truth, truth likewise becomes false. When naught be made to ought, ought changes into naught." Past the portal stood the door of a palace, and horizontally above this door were the 4 large characters, "The sea of retribution, the heaven of love." There were also a pair of scrolls with the inscription in large characters, "Passion, alas, thick as the earth, and lofty as the skies, from ages past to the present, hath held incessant sway. How pitiful your lot, ye lustful men and women envious, that your voluptuous debts should be so hard to pay." Pao yü, after perusal, communed with his own heart. "Is it really so?" he thought. "But I wonder what implies the passion from old till now, and what are the voluptuous debts? Henceforward I must enlighten myself." Pao yü was bent upon this train of thoughts when he unwittingly attracted several evil spirits into his heart, and with speedy step he followed in the track of the Fairy, and entered 2 rows of doors, which he perceived that the lateral halls were, on both sides, full of tablets and scrolls, the number of which he could not in one moment ascertain. He, however, discriminated in numerous places the inscriptions, "The board of lustful love," "The board of contracted grudges," "The board of matutinal sobs," "The board of nocturnal tears," "The board of vernal affections," "The board of autumnal anguish." After he had perused these inscriptions, he felt impelled to turn round and address the Fairy. "May I venture to trouble my Fairy," he said, "to take me along for a turn into the interior of each of these boards? May I be allowed, I wonder, to do so?" "Inside each of these boards," explained the Fairy, "are accumulated the registers with the records of all women of the whole world, of those who have passed away, as well as of those who have not as yet come into it, and you, with your mortal eye and human body, could not possibly be allowed to know anything in anticipation." But would Pao yü, upon hearing these words, submit to this decree? He went on to implore her permission again and again, until the Fairy, casting her eye upon the tablet of the board in front of her, observed, "Well, all right, you may go into this board and reap some transient pleasure." Section 12.